This comic book character has been around for over 90 years, and at the peak of his fame, Hollywood spent millions of dollars adapting it, only for one small marketing mistake to completely destroy the potential and dismantle any chance of big screen success going forward. Did Billy Zane blame the marketing for ruining his dream role? Was Joe Dante bullied out of directing for being too bold? And are we wrong for loving it anyway? Well, let's get into it.
Oh, it is beautiful.
It's the summer of 1920 in St. Louis, Missouri. A 9-year-old boy is missing school to grieve the death of his father, a Jewish immigrant called Benjamin Gross. The boy's mother, a woman named Eleanor Alina, is taking him to a stage magic show in the city to cheer him up. The boy would sit in a dark theater and find himself becoming lost in the majestic display of illusions before him. A dove vanishes from the magician's hand, only to be reproduced from a handkerchief. An elderly woman is being pulled from the crowd and hypnotized right in front of him. The impossible is being displayed as if it were a casual practice. The boy was instantly hooked, and this moment would change the course of his entire life. That boy was Lee Falk, and this magic show would unknowingly become the inciting incident that would one day bring us perhaps the greatest pulp comic movie of all time, The Phantom. But the road to getting there is far more entertaining than you might think. From daily comic book strips in the local paper to a career in stage directing, character development, and, of course, an entire catalog of comic books that would lead to a cult classic film. This is the story of Lee Falk's Phantom, and how this indie comic strip helped define comic book cinema from the 90s all the way to today. So let's begin.
Leaders, men of wisdom and knowledge, I have called you together because I fear there are forces that will menace your peace and happiness.
Lee Falk was born in Missouri in 1911, the son of 2 Jewish immigrants who raised their family in the suburbs of St. Louis. Falk was always a fan of the arts, particularly enjoying stage work and radio serials that he and his brother Leslie would spend hours consuming. After the death of their father, Falk's mother would remarry, and her new husband would become a dedicated father figure to the 2 boys, even leading them to change their last names to match his. Falk. Growing up, Falk would spend hours drawing characters and writing his own stories about whatever he found interesting at the time. Famously, Falk was obsessed with magic, and specifically, magicians. He found the mystique and swagger of stage magicians to be captivating in a way that seemed to supersede being merely human, and more like an all-powerful being, something that Falk fantasized about often. This obsession would eventually inspire Falk to draw and write stories for his first official comic book character, Mandrake the Magician.
Climax the festivities, I introduce our distinguished fellow passenger, Mandrake the Magician.
If you didn't know, Falk got a job in his early 20s making comic book strips for the paper about a magician who had actual magical powers and would use them to solve mysteries and protect the innocent. Mainly it was like a hypnosis thing that he would do for his foes and opposers that would kind of like construct an illusion that they would think is real, kind of like Loki in the old Thor cartoon.
It's not Thor, only a plastic dummy.
Right, and he's not the only dummy.
These comic book strips were being published by King Features, a major publisher from New York City. They had developed a rapport with Falk through his work on Mandrake, even paying him to make strips full-time. In one interaction, a friend told Falk that his drawings of Mandrake the Magician bared a striking resemblance to Falk himself. To which Falk replied, quote, "Of course he does. I was alone in a room with a mirror when I drew him." The strips were Falk's way of building a world far more interesting and fantastical than the real world that he was forced to live in. And this is all happening around the year 1934. The comic strips were a success, but Falk's obsession with magic was evolving into something deeper. While he held on to his connection to the whimsy of magic that he cherished so much as a child, Falk was realizing that the core of that fascination was rooted in his love for myths and mythology.
I started this when I was 19, so that what I knew about it is what I'd known in school and the things I'd seen as a boy. And as a child, I was interested in magicians. I was interested in adventurers, from Marco Polo on, I was interested in the great detectives like R. Samuel Penn and Sherlock Holmes. So Mandrake is a combination of all these things.
It's the winter of 1935 now, and Falk finds himself distracted. He's still writing Mandrake comic book strips, but he turned the illustration duties over to an artist named Phil Davis. The pair would work well together, but Falk found himself splitting time between writing the Mandrake strips and fantasizing about a new character that he's been dreaming up. A character that didn't have magical powers, but physical power. A character that was part man, part myth. A guardian of the city hidden behind a skin-tight bodysuit and a black mask. A character called the Phantom.
All right, gentlemen, nobody...
Ladies, kindly pardon my error.
So in February of 1937, nearly 90 years ago, the Phantom debuted in a King Features publication as a comic book strip. Originally, Falk was writing this character as a city-based crime fighter that would stalk villains in a gray suit. That's right, I said gray suit. He wouldn't get the purple suit that we all know and love for a few more years.
Not only is he mysterious, he's modest too.
Falk sort of created the idea of Batman with this character. His name was Kit Walker, a rich playboy with no real superpowers but morals of steel. Does that sound familiar? However, Falk based this character originally off of a Western-style vigilante, like a cowboy, which was another thing that Falk enjoyed as a child. It wasn't until a couple years later when Lee and King Features would reintroduce the character as a purple-suited jungle dweller who lived in a skull-shaped cave and had a pet wolf called Devil.
Your dog's a wolf.
I know. Come on.
And this is the Phantom that we all know and love now. The Phantom's backstory would stay mostly the same, with Falk writing some additional key details that contribute to the character's longevity. In the modern canon, Kit Walker inherited the mantle of the Phantom after college, abandoning his city slicker lifestyle for the cause and protecting the jungle from pirates who wanted to exploit it. See, the Phantom as a character is really an idea.
I'm about to say
a concept. It's something that's passed down from generation to generation. Kit inherited it from his father, who inherited it from his father, and so on. So if you're curious as to how we have so many different people that don the purple wetsuit, the mantle is ritualistically passed from person to person.
20 Phantoms came before me, but no one knew that. They all thought it was the same Phantom.
And Falk wanted to do this as a way to make his character feel like less of a superhero and more of a modern folklore. A timeless, anonymous protector that has been around for hundreds of years. A living tall tale. By the early 1940s, this daily strip was becoming a phenomenon, with readers following the adventures of Kit Walker to the tune of 100 million daily readers. This thing was the 1940s version of Pottermania in the 90s. Falk would be on the train and see handfuls of passengers reading his stories in the paper as if it was the scripture. He knew that the legend of the Phantom was bigger than a daily strip, so he kept writing more stories, even occasionally crossing over Mandrake the Magician with the Phantom in other forms of media.
What are those? Antrodemi, sometimes known as allosauri. Interesting creatures.
By 1943, Columbia Pictures was writing Falk letters every single week, begging him to take a meeting with them. His publisher, his illustrator, and his friends and family urged him to take the meeting, which he excitedly did. Columbia wanted to adapt Falk's Phantom stories into a weekly serial on television. They wanted to make 15 episodes that showcased the hero in all of his small screen glory. But there was a problem. Columbia, they have demands.
There has been no war among any of you, but I have reason to believe that there are evil influences trying to destroy the way of life under which you've lived and prospered.
They want to make the show, but they don't want to use Kit Walker as their Phantom, opting instead to write a nearly identical character by the name of Godfrey Prescott. Some say that this is because the Phantom's true identity hadn't been revealed in the comic book strips yet, but there are so many of these that it's really hard to tell if that's the case or not. The show was low budget and shot in the Hollywood Hills to cut costs, which, as you might imagine, didn't make for the easiest sell of a character who's supposed to be living in the jungle.
Now, don't waste my time being indignant. Just answer my question. Where's the Phantom?
Falk appreciated the show for his efforts, but he knew that there was no way with that budget and those limitations that the full potential of the character could be realized on screen. The show just didn't have the grandiose mythology or visual creativity to show the Phantom the way Falk had always imagined. Think of how we grew up hearing tales about the Boogeyman or even like the Tooth Fairy. We don't really think of them as actual people, but as larger-than-life mythical beings. This show failed to capture that aspect of the character.
Very well, here's my judgment.
So Falk just kept writing the comic books to be his way. And he does this for another decade, making enough money to support himself and doing it by way of an IP that he created. Lee was living out his childhood dream, but he never let go of the goal of seeing his creation expand into other types of media. By 1960, King Features had proudly been publishing the Phantom comic strips for decades, naming it their #1 adventure story of the publisher's history. The books are being published and translated to other languages now, making sales to an international audience. The character is being referenced in households, the readers are talking about the adventures as if they were daily news. This thing is growing.
Well, good. I feel a whole lot better now.
With the character's popularity spanning throughout the 70s and well into the 80s with a variety of comic books, novels, and comic book strips, the Phantom's monocle of the Ghost Who Walks and his iconic skull motif imagery became bigger than the character himself. And this is what Falk was always after. His superhero transcended the page and became an urban legend. Literally the idea of a character whose reputation precedes them. After decades of success with the Phantom, during which Falk was also directing and producing stage plays and writing original material, a now 80-something Lee Falk has made a life and career out of his childhood fantasies and obsessions. Heroic magicians, dastardly pirates, and the Ghost Who Walks were his life's work. Despite the trials and tribulations of his personal life during that time, including a few failed marriages, he never let the work suffer. Lee Falk wrote the stories for the Phantom comics the entire time, and he had successors to continue drawing the Phantom, including launching the careers of artists like Ray Moore, Wilson McCoy, Carmine Infantino, Bill Legante, and Cy Berry. But one box continued to remain unchecked. Falk still never saw a big screen adaptation of his character, which he had been dreaming of for decades. But all of that was about to change.
I've done 1,000 stories of the Phantom over a period of 60 years. It's in 500 or 600 papers around the world in about 25 languages. And it has a daily readership, which amazes me, of 100 million people.
It's the early 90s, and Falk has yet to retire from creating new adventures for the Phantom. The guy is still writing these comic books. Paramount Pictures is looking to adapt popular comic books into film with the rising popularity of superheroes in other types of media, a la the success of Tim Burton's Batman films. But also the rise of popularity in comic books in general, and not to mention the toy market, which was also booming at this time. Look at him. Isn't he cute?
Interesting. Excuse me.
This left the Phantom as a prime candidate for a film adaptation. Paramount options the rights, and so begins the shopping for screenplays. Originally, iconic filmmaker Joe Dante, who directed Gremlins and The Burbs, was hired to direct a film with a screenplay drafted by Jeff Bohm. Dante wanted to make the movie a very tongue-in-cheek, kind of semi-satire, but ultimately a love letter to the campy nature of the pulp comic generation. He even planned to finish the movie off with a final battle between the Phantom and a giant winged demon. Sounds awesome. Surprisingly, Paramount was originally down for that. However, after multiple delays in the film's production, Dante would find himself pulled away to other commitments, leaving Paramount time to retool the script and shift away from parody and lean more into a self-serious adaptation. This left the script for the movie feeling somewhat awkward and tonally inconsistent, as you can still hear and see the traces of that campy satire underneath some of the more self-serious stuff.
Think of it this way. You represent the old guard of grizzled scallywags and peg-leg Pete's, while I stand for the new order of things, modern and up-to-date.
What was left was a script that pulled inspiration from 3 key storylines in the Phantom Comics mythology. This includes the Sing Brotherhood, the Sky Band, and of course, the Belt. However, the movie did introduce some completely new characters and heighten the supernatural elements of the story to make it more action-packed and in line with what superheroes were becoming in pop culture. Basically, they wanted this character that was older than Batman to be more like Batman.
The Phantom was among the first comic strip heroes, predating Superman and Batman. He was created in 1935 by Lee Falk.
Phantom fanboy Simon Windsor ends up taking over the directing duties when Dante falls out, and production begins in 1995, with a tight schedule to release in the summer of 1996. During this time, Falk is still writing stories for the character in print, and even loosely consults on aspects of the movie.
Oh, I know all about these skulls and the power they contain.
Billy Zane gets perfectly cast as Kit Walker, and he hits the gym hard to get in peak shape for the gig, which he did.
For Billy Zane, destiny played a role.
If I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Phantom is the only comic I ever collected. I read my first, and I collected late, as an adult I got into him. And if there was one role I was ready to play, it was this one.
The production was originally set to film in Hawaii, but due to the budget and time constraints, the film locations were moved to Thailand, Los Angeles, and New York City. The jungle locations, including the Skull Cave and the introduction action sequence, were shot in Thailand. And I think that is all the best looking part of this movie, although to be honest, the whole thing looks pretty good. I love the retro futuristic design of the city, and that's always very charming, and they impressively made that in NYC. Filming wrapped in February of 1996, and the film enters post-production. And finally, Falk is starting to see the live-action version of his creation come to life. And then there's gonna be some more problems.
I'm not concerned with some jungle folk hero half a world away.
Through the film's editing stage, multiple action scenes were cut, which include a wrestling scene with a lion and a fight scene with an anaconda. Although some of those more animal-heavy fight scenes were scrapped, the movie's edit would also cut much of the romance between Kit and Diana, opting to present a more swashbuckling and action-oriented movie. This caused some concern for Falk, as his main interest was in seeing the legend of the Phantom. He wanted to see the folklore hero he created, not another vigilante in a skin-tight suit. But at this point, it was out of his hands.
Kind of brings a tear to the eye, doesn't it? What went wrong?
The film was released in theaters in the summer of 1996 and opens as a live-action feature in the United States and Australia, starring Billy Zane as Kit Walker / the Phantom, who in this movie is the 21st Phantom, along with Treat Williams, Christy Swanson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, James Remar, and Patrick McGowan. It was released with a reported budget of about $45 million. The film was marketed as a retro 1930s set pulp action adventure, directly inspired by Falk's early comic book strips and featuring the Sync Brotherhood and the Sky Band as core antagonists, as well as translating key comic book motifs like the Skull Ring, the Jungle Oath, and the Generational Legacy. If you want to know more about the crazy making of this movie, you can check out this video that I made last year. That one focuses more on the production itself, all of the things that went into getting this movie made.
It's a classic. Like Batman and Superman, it stood the test of time. The Phantom is an old-fashioned comic book hero. He gets by on his wits and his wiles, his physical ability.
So now, with the movie being out to the masses and Falk still writing new comic books for the character, you would expect that this is what it would take to catapult the Phantom into the mainstream, but it didn't. Falk finally sat down and watched the final cut of the Phantom movie in 1996, and it wasn't what he expected. Falk mostly had mixed to negative things to say about the movie, stating that he appreciated the treatment of the character, but the script, tone, and overall execution of the film left a lot to be desired for this legendary author. He felt that the movie's tongue-in-cheek approach, the stuff that at least made it into the movie, undercut the legacy that he had spent over 5 decades building. He imagined the Phantom as a serious character, doing serious work. Falk did like the cast, especially praising Billy Zane, who, as I said, committed himself to the role fully, and it showed in his physical prep and stoic performance.
The physical aspects of the character appealed to Zane. He spent more than a year preparing to play the role.
I studied the cat-like movements and the comics themselves, which have very distinct poses.
Unfortunately, the underwhelming box office performance and mixed to negative critical reviews barred this movie from getting a sequel or really being revived on screen in any way. Unless you count, I think Sci-Fi did like a few episodes or just a pilot of a Phantom TV series. Have you seen it? Is it good? The movie is great.
I am in such a good mood right now. I almost hate to mention this.
Falk would pass away in 1999 at the age of 87, and it feels like we've never been further away from getting another crack at the Phantom. Maybe one day another obsessed superfan will become a filmmaker, option the rights to it, and give us the Phantom movie that Lee Falk would have always wanted. And on that day, I'll definitely be buying a ticket because I am a lifelong fan of this character. As much as I do love the film, I would love to see what Lee Falk's vision would have looked like. And folks, that is the story of Lee Falk and the more than 60 years that he spent creating a modern myth, bringing us a swashbuckling pirate buster that deserves to become a swashbuckling pirate blockbuster, who also has one of the best costumes in all of comics. Thank you for watching today's video, everybody. I know this was a long one, but I think that the subject matter was worth it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're not subscribed, leave a comment. Let me know, what do you think of the Phantom? What do you think of the Phantom movie? What do you think of this video? All that and whatever else you want to tell me goes in the comments below. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.
A small boy saw his father savagely murdered by pirates of the same brotherhood. That same boy swore an oath of vengeance to fight piracy, greed, and cruelty in all its forms. And he became the first Phantom. I'm his descendant, Diane. Never point a gun at someone because it just might go off.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.